My first memory as a child is the ordination of my father to be a minister at the Greenwood Mennonite Church in rural Delaware. I was nearly 3 at the time. For as long as I can remember, I've been a preacher's kid. Like most preacher's kids, I felt ambivalent about church, loved being on the inside track, but hated being held to a higher standard than my friends. Whenever I said or did something, everybody seemed to be watching. One Sunday when I was about 6 or 7, my parents decided I was grown up enough to sit in the third pew with the other boys my age. My dad was in the chancel with the other ministers. I don't recall, or I have repressed, exactly what I did that displeased my father. But at one point during the sermon, another minister was preaching. He came down from the chancel, took me by the arm, and led me back to the chancel to sit beside him during the sermon. I was mortified. I wished I was dead. Let the record show, however, that despite my embarrassment, I must have liked the view from the chancel. My daughter Zoe was 3 weeks old when I preached my first sermon at All Souls. She also grew up a preacher's kid. Since she's now off to college, and I speak about her with her permission, let me state at the outset that I never felt embarrassed by her behavior in church. She handled the often challenging role of living in an ecclesiastical fishbowl with aplomb, even when held to a higher standard than her peers. That's not to say she didn't feel ambivalent about church, especially during her middle school years. Our deal with Zoe was simple. She had to participate actively in the religious education program through our 9th grade coming-of-age class. After that, she could decide for herself. As Zoe entered the coming-of-age program, the trend lines were not favorable. She had become increasingly provocative in our conversations about church, saying she didn't believe in God and didn't think church was important. For the most part, Holly and I didn't take the bait. "You'll need to decide for yourself," we said. One evening in September of 2007, having just completed her first assignment for the coming-of-age class, Zoe came tearing out of her room, waving a sheet of paper. "Papa, hom-hom," she called, "I just took the religion test on BeliefNet, and I'm 100% Unitarian Universalist." On the one hand, how could she not be? Raised in this congregation on what Holly likes to call a small, exotic little island off the coast of North America. On the other hand, as a preacher's kid, the odds were at least as great that she would rebuff the tradition as embrace it. Whether the religion quiz was the point of fulcrum or not, Zoe ended the coming-of-age program by affirming her connection to this congregation. She even signed the register to become an associate member of All Souls. As it turns out, she also liked the view from the chancel. In addition to her coming-of-age credo, which the students deliver from this pulpit, She also delivered homilies in the high school services for the next 3 years, and she gave the commencement address at the church school graduation this past June. Zoe's enthusiasm about All Souls developed for a specific reason, which I find especially interesting in light of the difference between her upbringing and mine. I grew up in a cloistered environment, socially speaking, and my friends at church kept me from feeling utterly alone. Zoe, in contrast, has always been connected to everyone. She texted and emailed and Skyped and Facebooked and tweeted to everyone she knows, and sometimes all at once. Nonetheless, the sense of community and shared purpose in her coming-of-age group drew her in. As she said in her graduation address, All Souls provided her with a refuge from the drama of school. What I will take with me, she said, is the love and connection I have felt within this church. I learned how to love in Owl and how to question the world around us in coming of age. This is a wonderful and unique place for every stage of my life. Last year, the Public Religion Research Institute conducted in-depth interviews with 25 young adults aged 18 to 29 from Middle Church in Manhattan, a progressive congregation affiliated with Marble Collegiate Church. In the interviews, the millennials, as this generation is known, echo what Zoe says she loves about All Souls. In a typical response, one of the Middle Church millennials said that churches should be oases in a sea of noise. They should be places of healing and of peace. They're sites of tradition and belonging and feeling connected to a whole host, so that you realize you're not alone, that other people care about you and about the things that are happening in your life and are interested in lifting you up. So then in a world that's very I-centric, it becomes about a we and about a community and about an opening up and about a place where you can be safely challenged and not feel like you will end up alone. These millennials also expect their religious community to make a difference in the world. That's why I love religion, one respondent said. When people are like, oh, I'm spiritual but not religious, I think, but where do you find the community to actually engage in doing stuff? How do you actually get together and have somebody that's actually holding you responsible for going out and doing something? This particular community made me feel like I had a responsibility to actually do something, that you couldn't just show up at church and not be actively involved in what's happening in the rest of the world. These responses bode well for congregations like All Souls. Millennials are interested in the discipline of a tradition, but not the millstone of dogma. They value diversity and openness. They're not afraid of setting spiritual goals and being held to account for reaching them. They cherish a sense of individuality and a strong sense of community. They are interested in changing the world, and their presence among us in this congregation has helped change us as well. In other words, they want a community of faith that does what a community of faith ought to do. So do I. So do all of us. At its best, a community of faith welcomes us as we are, connects us with others in shared purpose, and unites our efforts to transform ourselves and our world. It helps focus our intention and clarify our place in the world. In the weeks that have passed since Steve Jobs has died, I've been pondering his legacy and asking what it might teach us about our experience of religious community. To be sure, his legacy wasn't all positive. Even his friends concur that Jobs could be obsessive, condescending, and harsh. And he clearly paid less attention than he should have to how his products were manufactured and at what physical and emotional toll to his workers. Even so, Jobs had a singular impact on our experience of technology. In an essay in Time magazine, Walter Isaacson, whose biography of Jobs hits the bookstores tomorrow, notes that Jobs vehemently opposed the open architecture of the early personal computers. Lots of plugs and cords and cables, lots of slots for memory and expansion cards, and an open invitation to developers to write their own programs for the machines. Jobs wanted none of that chaos. He wanted seamless integration, and he set out relentlessly to achieve it. Isaacson writes, "This ability to integrate hardware, software, and content into a single Apple-designed system enabled him to impose simplicity. The astronomer Johann Kepler declared that nature loves simplicity and unity. So did Steve Jobs. In a world filled with junky devices, clunky software, inscrutable error messages, and annoying interfaces, Jobs' insistence on a simple, integrated approach led to astonishing products marked by delightful user experiences. Using an Apple product could be as sublime as walking into one of the Zen gardens of Kyoto that Jobs loved.